In the game of Survivor, there are many questions. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? And who has the best story? That's the mission of the Survivor Storytellers. It's what they do.
That is indeed what we do. How's it going, everyone? We are the Survivor Storytellers, and I am wondering, who the hell voted for me? It's Tiki. Alongside, there goes his dreams. It's Casey. And he's starting this shit now. It's Laser Dude, aka Ken. How y'all doing? That's right. 3 Rupert quotes for the price of 1.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm doing well.
I'm just super jazzed over our Penner intro that we got there. How amazing is that? I mean, what other Survivor channels got that? None, except for those who've had Penner on as a guest. But besides them.
All right. Maybe one day we can actually get him on as a guest. Maybe one day.
You got to get big, though. So subscribe. That's our only plug. Continuing on. All right. Survivor 43. What are our first impressions?
I got to tell you guys, I don't think I'm as instantly in love with it as I was 42. I do really like the fact that we had almost every character get some solid introduction. That being said, I'm a bit wary of the fact that it feels like each tribe, and I do feel like this is like maybe for the first time since Survivor's come back, like each tribe does have a pretty definitive camera hog on it. Maybe not even each tribe, because honestly, the Yellow tribe has 2 camera hogs as far as Gabler and Sammy, and then honestly, by far, we'll get to him. It's probably an unpopular opinion to say that I'm not a fan of him, but spoiler alert, Cody's a lot, dude. He's a lot. And I don't know. I don't know how much of Cody I can handle for a whole season. We'll get there. But what I did really, really appreciate about this episode is the subtle little changes and switch ups that they've been doing to the editing. I loved the opening montage. I loved the little stuff like Owen getting the title card and the lower third occupation with Sammy and all that. I really love the little editing flourishes there. And specifically, we'll get into it, but goddamn, that tribal council, I don't know what it was about it, but the way that it was edited was just freaking masterful as far as building suspense. And Casey, I actually I was almost sick to my stomach how much I related to Owen in that moment. And I thought for sure that Owen was going to go basically the same way I went, of like, oh God, it's not even that he didn't do anything wrong. It's just that he didn't really send out as many feelers as he could have. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah. Very, very
strong. So many Survivor draft picks were going to be blown up if Owen went home first. Like everybody was drafting him first. We could have had a Darnell situation here. It was so. It was a close one though.
I was so nervous, man. But keep in mind, I also like Mariah was like very high on my rankings as far as my most anticipated characters. So honestly, right off the bat, it was a bummer. It was a bummer that those 2 were the boot options, man.
Yeah, I mean, for myself with this season, I say that, just with this first episode, I wasn't over the moon excited and entertained, right? But what I will say about this is, in terms of their format, in terms of what they did as a story for this first episode, the fact that we had a 2-hour episode with 1 boot was fantastic. This is exactly the way every single premiere should be edited. We got a glance into every character. We got enough time to know them as people and as characters, and it all ended in what preseason was a little bit of a shocker for me because I was on the same boat. I was actually super high on Mariah, but then in the actual show itself, I don't feel like she delivered in the way that I thought she would. But I think the format of this premiere, the structure of this story was as close to a perfect premiere as possible. Could you imagine this structure for season 41?
Oh man, I will say I'm 100% agreement on this. Survivor needs to do this going forward. I mean, like 2-hour premieres with 2 vote offs, that's fine. But I feel like with 2-hour premiere with 1 vote off is better because I have a good idea of what's happening in all 3 tribes. There's not any tribe where it's like, I'm not really sure where everyone's head's at. I can tell on the blue tribe, it seems to be the women getting together and pulling in James to have the numbers. I can tell on the yellow tribe that Ellie seems to be in sort of the linchpin position between all the people there. I can tell on the red tribe, Jesse seems to be a little bit in the middle with Cody and Nika and the other girls. And I have no idea where Dwight's at, and who cares? He doesn't have a vote. But I love that we got to really know everybody almost. And at the very least, even if I did, like I just said, I don't know where Dwight's at, but I got to see a part of him as he went on his journey and whatnot. But also, the advantages didn't take up the entire episode. You know, it wasn't Shipwheel Island, but the Bag Island or whatever you want to call it. It was only a small part of the episode, and it was just like over and done with. And it was like, oh, okay. All in. I really like the premiere.
I will also say too, before we actually start getting into the tribe and character breakdowns, that in terms of their what were we calling it before? Their like delegation, their summit, I believe is actually what we were calling it in the previous seasons. Their summit. For this summit, we got a lot less of it, period, and a lot less of it as characters, whereas in the previous 2 seasons, the summit we got to see these dynamics and these characters. We didn't really get that this season, but it was still pretty minimal. But overall, I still really liked the first episode, and I kind of wish that would maybe have been the one change, something that they would have kind of done more of, but maybe they just didn't have that content.
I will say with the summit that I did really enjoy the change up to the actual game mechanic.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like the Shipwheel Island thing, you could figure it out pretty quickly, and it just was used to build alliances. I kind of like that this is almost the opposite of that. Like, you could use it to build alliances. This could also cause some bad blood between other tribes, which is just as helpful in building up tensions between other tribes. I like that too. You have Gabler's like, I'm definitely going in, and Dwight's like, me too. And now one of them lost a vote. There's definitely now some animosity that Dwight probably has towards Gabler because of that.
Which it was also just really stupid. I will say that, like, it's baffling. They have seen at least Survivor, 41. They probably saw 42, or at least all the beginning stuff of 42.
Oh, they definitely saw 42 because they reference like Jonathan and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure if because of COVID stuff, they maybe left before the end, but they at least saw the beginning. They at least saw all the summit
They didn't
stuff.
see the end. I know they didn't see the end because in the Rob Has the Podcast interview, Mariah said that character she was most like that wasn't a winner was Marianne, because she says she hadn't won yet. So in her mind, that was who she was like. So they watched some, but not all.
Well, the main point being is they at least saw the summit stuff, and it's absolutely baffling to me that they did not clearly communicate. If I was in that position, and I was Dwight, let's say for instance, now Gabler did not say definitely he was doing it. He said he pretty much was implying he probably would, but if I was Dwight, I would have been like, look. Are you actually doing this? Because I'm also doing this. Be clear about it, because he made an unnecessary risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning. I mean, granted, actually, Dwight probably needed it more than anyone, but even so, be clear about your communication, because now you potentially put yourself in a situation you could have avoided if you knew Gabler was 100% doing it.
I think it's just greedy. Both of them you get a little, and there's a reason why Carla was the only person who didn't take anything, and I think she's probably the one who's going to go the farthest out of those three.
I would agree. Carla has actually completely surprised me. But I guess on that note, let's actually just jump into the tribes because we'll get to Carla and I'm sure Dwight at one point. So we'll just start off with Baka, the yellow tribe, where we saw a Mariah boot. So what do you guys think about the characters and the story with them?
Yeah, I thought this tribe really popped. I honestly think out of the tribes, my least favorite is probably Bessie.
That's my favorite.
I have thoughts on Cody, and they're probably unpopular thoughts. But
no, I don't care about Cody. But yeah, continue on.
Good. Cody, like I said, it's a lot. But all right, I really like this tribe. I really do. I think Janine is a very quiet player. I think out of all the characters, she probably got the least amount of screen time. The only real thing she got was on the mat. She kind of reminded me of Heather's premiere edit in that regard.
I would say she got a little bit more because she seemed to have a little bit more play. Like she was in with Ellie. She seems to be Ellie's tightest too, and Ellie seems to be good with everybody. But I get what you mean. She is definitely a number 2 in this sort of thing. But I felt like her fear was, a realistic one because I feel like she thinks that if they're going on who's the weakest, she would be the next one to go in that sort of grouping, and she's not necessarily wrong. But let's be clear. I don't think Mariah was voted out because she was the weakest. I think it's because she did the least amount of strategizing and was trying to be all, let's kumbaya tribe. I mean, when she was all like, we had a moral victory in this challenge. I was like, just get her off. Okay. He's like, don't give me that be like participation trophy crap here. All right. Come on. You lost. Accept that you lost. Learn from it. Don't let it get you down. But moral victory on Survivor.
I think she's. I mean, that's also a social play in of itself, and I think though with Janine, she actually probably was the visibly weakest on this tribe. Seeing her struggle in the challenge, I think, proved that. But also, there's other things that we don't see that's at play. I mean, hell, they could have been referencing weak in a number of factors. But if they're saying that she's the weakest, then it's either a cop-out or we have to take it at that value and say that Mariah really is the weakest.
I think all 3 of the men on this tribe are just absolute slam dunks when it comes to casting.
Oh, man. You know what? I will say this. Sammy actually surprised me. I put a little bit. Just like when Sammy's like, guys, we're overthinking this numbers thing. If you put these 2 here, that you got more numbers. I totally thought he was going to be like, no, you have to do the highest with 4 numbers. And I thought he was going to biff out and like, oh, well, my bad. But then he turned out to be right. I'm like, oh, okay. He surprised me in a lot of ways. So yeah, he's fun. Gabler, what the heck is he doing? That guy is all over the place strategically, and it's not good. And then Owen is just like,
I think represents like clearly the dude is not long for the game as far as like he's obviously got no chance to win. Like he's a piping hot mess when it comes to the actual gameplay side of things.
Yes.
That being said, I like as I have already established, I am very much the person who like I think the Keith Nails of the world are like some of my favorite casting choices. So by all means, like I want Gabler to stick around because his very presence is going to cause chaos. And I just think that he's just he is a very charismatic character, even if he is a stone cold idiot.
I mean, it's funny, when we had talked about this a couple weeks ago when we originally did the first podcast, like, some of these people really surprised me. I had higher hopes for Owen, had higher hopes for Mariah. Owen, I don't think is proving, unless Owen can turn it around, very similar to like the winner of David versus Goliath. Why am I forgetting his name right now?
Nick.
Nick, yeah, like Nick, I was expecting to be a really bad dud in that first episode, and then he turned it around. He ended up winning the whole game. Unless Owen can do that, because at this point, I don't have much faith in him. Gabler is pretty much exactly what I expected him to be, and Sammy has absolutely stunned me because I even said it in the preseason
Sammy
podcast.
is like he was my number one on my cast ranking, and I think that I am so happy with that. Like I like the best casting choice by a mile on the season. That's not even to poo-poo anyone else. I just think like, my God, that kid's camera presence is just off the charts.
This is the first time you've ever seen an angular job title. Like we've seen multiple, but I've never seen him come in at multiple different angles. Like student, pet cremator, part-time investor, or whatever he's like. I've never seen him come in on sideways.
I'm sure he does have the potential to evolve into a villain. But I honestly think that for this first episode, he was a lot more neutrally toned than I thought he could potentially be.
I agree. I was expecting him to be young and chaotic, and he's proven himself to be smart. And he's funny,
very
like
sharp,
yeah, and like he is a smart guy. We can very clearly see that he's actually probably pulling the most weight in his tribe. And it's funny, like I usually watch Survivor with my family, and we were talking right as they were doing the numbers challenge, and I actually said the exact same thing that he said, but I get his hesitation. You don't want to come right out and like say that. But yeah, I really like Sammy, and I will say that with Ellie is everything I expected her to be. I'm telling you, she's got to be the winner of the season. She did not dominate her presence, but she's there, and she's there, and she is going to be in charge.
So I want to talk to you about Ellie as far as like winning chances go, because I've got a bone to pick with Edgic, and that Edgic basically thinks like because she initially pitched the Girls Alliance and then she went back on it, basically Edgic is like, oh, she's got no chance now. She's a chaotic villain. I'm like, what the fuck? You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
Like, she gave all the reasoning in the world. Like, it's not like she's like a Philip Shepard, like over-the-top chaotic personality. Like, you guys are, not to mention I don't know, man. It's like, I probably follow the actual Edgic thread way closer than the two of you do. Like I
don't really care for Edgic.
I never even really look into it. Edgic. I do look at the edit and see what is presented. But honestly, I don't feel like that's like I bet there's so many seasons that have had an all girls alliance that just doesn't last because. On day one, you're like, all right, let's case him. And then like day 2 and 3, you form stronger bonds with these other people. Then you're like, well, maybe I don't want them on my tribe. And Mariah, everything she was saying in the pre-season made it clear that she was not one for scheming and plotting. So it did not surprise me at all that she was going by the wayside.
Mariah's opening confessional about like, well, I'm here to make friends.
Yeah,
I think
that
it's
is
a
the
smart
thing
way to approach the game. Obviously, she didn't have the right execution, but I do think she had a decent game plan.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The social aspect of this is very important, but also living in our new era of Survivor that we are living in, it's something that I tend to get into arguments with some of my friends about. It's like, this format of Survivor is here to stay, and when there are no tribe swaps, you really do potentially need to sacrifice social connections to ensure that you even make it to the merge. Mm-hmm. So if they needed to get rid of Mariah to do so, then they need to get rid of Mariah.
I mean, I can relate because it's essentially how I was trying to play Prometheus for the brief time I was there. Was I was basically just trying to engage in as much of the social dynamics of the tribe, whereas I was scared shitless to actually I did throw one name out there in my time, but I was very timid to actually do the alliance making. I was hoping to get roped into an alliance, and it did not happen.
Yeah, it's funny because I think like we're seeing two different tribes that both started with let's do an all-girl alliance, and I think this one didn't hold, but I think the blue one is going to hold.
I feel like all three of them said that, didn't they? They all entertained the idea, at least.
No, NECA and Cody were trying to get Jesse on the other side, and then the two girls were, I guess, maybe with Dwight, they never really said that, but there was the two girls trying to get Jesse as well. But anyway, that we'll get to there when we get to there. But it's interesting to see, like, this is the one that just doesn't hold. And I wonder if that means, like, maybe some of these girls will be into that sort of all-girl alliance down the road. Maybe it's setting something up for down the road. Like, maybe they join the Blue Tribe and go with their girl thing. But I don't know. Could be. For the other characters on the tribe, Janine, I think she's actually could be a dark horse in the just stands in the background until the right moment to stab her number one ally in the back and run away with it. Gabler, I think he's just going to be so much fun. He's a plane crashing towards a mountain, and there's nothing he can do. He thinks everything's fine. I turned the seatbelt sign on. It's good. That's about how I can describe his gameplay. And Owen, I just think he needs a chance. I think right now he's in a very precarious position, but if he finds any wiggle room, I think he'll make the best use out of it.
Yeah, I mean, they're very interesting, and sometimes it's really hard to tell how they're going to play out as characters, in this story so far. Because even as last season, when I had high expectations for some people after the first episode, and their whole character flipped by the next or two episodes later.
Swati.
What's that?
Swati was a good example for me. After the first episode, I was like, "Ooh, I'm looking out for her. That's a great backstory," and then she was like instantly gone.
Yeah, for me, it was the guy with leukemia when he was a kid. I forget his name right now.
Oh, Daniel. Yeah.
Daniel. Yeah. For me, he was one of the three players I was saying to look out for last season. The other two I was more or less right about, but I was wrong about him. But I mean, it's really hard to tell, trying to read.
Hype, so I'm not surprised that you zeroed in on him.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking about a lot of these people. We know who the big players are. Sammy and Gabler ate up all the time. Janine is either going to get a huge boost in story the day she gets booted, or she'll be something, to look at later, the dark horse, so to speak. But I'm still saying Ellie is the winner pick, and we're getting the droppings of hints, here in this first episode. But that's all I have to say about Baka.
Yep, we can move on.
All right, I guess moving on to Coco, the Blue Tribe.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of good players here. I just want to shed a light on Lindsay, who I think is maneuvered herself really well in this tribe. A lot better than I think I was giving her credit for before preseason, because she's so far as we know, she's set up a good alliance with the girls, but has also roped in the one guy that they need in James. And if you're in that spot, she's got most of the votes on her side.
Yeah, she's definitely the one that stood out to me the most as far as gameplay. And then also I think just her confessionals were also like, I felt like she had a really good kind of like median amount of screen time. Like she wasn't overbearing, but she definitely wasn't forgettable either. And I thought some of the quotes, like, this is my one shot and I got to make the most of it. And, I've known Survivor longer than I've known my husband and kids. Like, it really does, like, she is getting a really good kind of like super fan at it, I think.
And I think that's like super telling. I think that's maybe even a little bit like, hey, I know that older women don't usually get brought back on Survivor. I mean, I guess it was like Second Chance. They brought back, like, I guess you count Sari, and I guess some of the older people for Women's Award, but usually
he had Kelly Wigglesworth.
Yeah, but anyway, it's like I think she's like, I'm not necessarily going to be the fan favorite that's brought back the very next season, right? So I got to make the most of this shot while I'm at it, and I think at the very least she's not going to be a Heather that just falls under the radar, and I don't even think she's going to be a Jenny like last season that falls short early. But everything, the guys on this tribe except for James seem to be a little clueless.
Yeah.
So Gio, I think, is probably like out of everyone in the cast, just edgically speaking, the person I can probably rule out the most. I don't know what it is about. Like, there's nothing about his edit.
You out from being voted out?
Just as far as like, I don't see a lot of winning upside with him. And I very much see his edit as a pre-merge edit.
I think Geo goes next.
I do too, because unless they're really zeroing in on Ryan as a threat, but we already established, like, they need the strength, and Ryan is the the challenge beast of that tribe, like, hands down.
And I'm not being fooled by the LGBT edit again, because like last season we were like, oh, Romeo and Hai have this very emotional moment. This means they're going to be allies throughout the game.
I know, right?
Like, that was not that. It did not end that way.
I still have some tinfoil hat theories in my head that that whole exchange on some level actually led to the animosity between Romeo and Hai. I don't know. I think there's something.
Maybe, but in any case, I feel like they're playing it because it's a nice moment. We shouldn't overread into it as strategy ally things.
No, sometimes it's just a very humanizing moment that makes for good television. Yeah. For Coco,
Ryan, I honestly think is probably like, just by default, he's got to be the person I'm like personally rooting for, because I can, like, I don't have cerebral palsy, of course, but I do, I am on the autism spectrum, and so I can very much relate to how he describes the stutter in his brain, because I feel very much the same way in a lot of social situations where, like, my brain will just kind of like freeze up or go haywire. And so for him to kind of like be living with that, with that roadblock in his life and being able to overcome it, like, I honestly find it super duper inspirational. And I'm really, I'm predicting for him to go like around early merge, just because he is kind of like a big challenge beast. And I honestly don't see him being that much of a strategy guy at all. I really don't see him being like that sharp in the strategy department, but I'm hoping for him to be around as long as he can, because like I said, I find his story to be incredibly inspirational.
See, with this, okay, so with Ryan, I feel like something's giving me a vibe that he could potentially actually be a very early boot, just like kind of be a social outlier. And I hope that's not the case, because I actually very much like him. And I think the Coco tribe, just in general, some of their characters have gotten more lopsided edits. I think Carla probably has the most screen time alongside Lindsay. And I don't know, something's giving me a very like sympathy fallen too soon sort of vibe with his character. I hope that's not the case. I would prefer it to be Gio or even Cassidy, but I don't think Cassidy's going unless like she really does not help out in a tribe. But I'm thinking it's potentially Ryan, but if not Gio, I'm almost getting the feeling too, we're going to see a Lindsay James like duo as they go on. They kind of had that Philly connection, even though Lindsay's from Downingtown, she's still close enough to Philadelphia. I think that's what we're getting with her and him. We're getting a duo vibe. She's 42, he's 36, kind of on the older side when it comes to a lot of survivors. But I think Carla is probably going to be the biggest character of them all, which stuns me because I was actually not projecting that Carla would probably go far. But I actually really like her.
I mean, Carla did have like the big tease in the trailer episode for the season.
I'm trying not to read too much into those, like, because like I was trying to think, like, was Marianne in those big teaser things? I think she was for a second. Erica wasn't, but then where was Erica?
I think the biggest moment that Marianne had in the teaser was like the kind of like Pikachu face that her and Omar make towards each other. They find the idol.
I'm actually a little surprised with Cassidy. She seemed to be the one that got the ball rolling for the All Women's Alliance, and it seems to be holding a lot more than it did on the Baka tribe. At least from what we can tell, it could still crumble at any moment. You never know. But yeah, and Carla has been doing. I think that she is in a good spot. She's definitely in the swing position, like the Gio and Ryan seem to like her and everything, but I feel like she's just one of those players that once she is in control, like everyone's going to see it eventually. I think she does go far, though. I think she's going like, I don't have any worry for Carla in the early point of this game at all.
Yeah, I agree. Early, I don't see her being the threat. I could see her being a like early to mid-late boot because of her threat level. I don't think she's going to manage it very well. Something gives me those vibes, but I mean, this is just all speculation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I got to admit, like, I didn't get the hype for Cassidy preseason, and like one episode in, like, yeah, she did get the confessional about starting the Women's Alliance, and that's great, but frankly, I think people are overhyping this girl a little bit just based on her physical looks, which, yeah, she is very attractive and very cunning, and that's her
cast photo is really good.
But I don't know. I don't get the hype for her. Like, I'm sure she has the potential to evolve into a really good character. But one episode in, I honestly thought the content that we've gotten from her so far is still just a little bit generic.
I could see Cassidy being the girl they cut from the Women's Alliance. Well, let's say Coco starts going on a losing streak, and they lose the first one, they vote out Gio. They lose the next one, they vote out Ryan. If they lose another one, are they going to vote out her or James first?
Well, I
could see James.
That Lindsay and James have that connection, so I don't think.
Yeah, I think that Lindsay could sway them to keep James over her, and I feel like James is in a decent spot where he just needs to do well with Lindsay and just sit back and not really have to do too much. I mean, he does run the risk of if they do run out of guys, he's the next one on there. But as long as he can make himself more essential to Lindsay's game than Cassidy, then I think he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
See anyone else working on this tribe?
I think I more or less said what I wanted to say. I would like to see an all, Women's Alliance, whether it happens, I'd really like to see something come together, merge. And I think it would be incredibly fun if all the women picked off all the guys at the merge, and that's literally all it was. But I mean, I don't know. I think just like a lot of seasons, it ends up becoming like this trigger word. And so they always put it in there because it always riles something up. But oftentimes it just never amounts to anything. But yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say about Coco.
Okay. So Vessi,
the Red Tribe.
Okay, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first. Cody, how we feeling?
I actually I like Cody. I think he's a lot of fun. He's chaotic, and he will be a pretty early boot. I'd be very surprised if he made it to merge.
Guys, Cody's not going anywhere. First I want to say Cody's highlight is the episode. He had the one smart moment to put the flint in the hole of the bamboo and move it up that way. Good for you, for Cody. We got to give him props for being smart.
That was Cody that said that? I thought that was...
yeah, that was Cody.
I guess I was mixing someone else up.
But yeah. I will say this. Cody, I think that here's what we saw. We saw Jesse in the middle of two potential alliances. We got Cody and NECA on one side, and you got Justine and Noelle on the other. I think for Jesse, it makes all the more sense to go with the two clueless players in Cody and NECA over the two people who seem to be one, a really strong threat, and one who's a very, seems to be a strategic threat in Justine and Noelle. So I feel like this Red Tribe is going to be keeping Cody and keeping NECA around, and it's going to be Jesse's tribe. That's my prediction for this, for the early going at least.
I don't know. See, we've gotten a little bit about their time. It's so hard, especially this early on, to really try and figure this out. Like, I do agree. I think it would be better to go with the clueless people because then you can kind of control their every move.
I mean, we saw Shan make the mistake of going with the strategically sound people because eventually those people are going to turn on you. Going to get with the clueless people might be more stressful in the early goings because you can't have to finagle their way around them and they're terrible at lying and stuff. But in the long run, they might just be dumb enough to keep you all the way to the end.
I see. I think with this tribe, though, like, I think the three people who I'm like trying to feel out their story the best about what we've been shown is all Cody, Dwight, and Jesse. I don't think Dwight's going to do very well, or he's going to be playing from the bottom the whole time. Jesse, I could see him rising to a power position, but whether or not he keeps that position or he fizzles out pretty quickly. But with Cody, in so many situations, I just keep thinking, I don't think he's going to go far. And like they put him in the previews for next week, where people start to talk about that aspect of him. But if he was the boot next week, I don't think they would have put that in the previews. And I think that's part of reading this story as well. But I still think Cody probably will not make it to the merge, or he won't make it far into the merge if he does.
I mean, like I said, my issue with Cody is honestly just like the same issue I have with literally anyone who kind of dominates the screen time of their tribe. And that's just that, like, I just simply, like, out of the tribes, I just really don't feel like I have that much of a handle on certainly the women of the tribe. I think the women of this tribe in particular, like, we'll get to Noelle. Noelle was basically the exact edit that I thought she would have, which is literally the exact edit that they give every
amputee
person like this, every amputee, like the whole, like, the introduction, like, hey, I've got a lot of leg jokes, and then maybe set up one connection and fade into the background. Like, it's almost kind of like cut and paste. I don't know.
I mean, but we do have 18 people we're being introduced to, and sometimes it's easy, as from an editing standpoint, to go into the generals. You make it broad. You give the like the bare basic general idea of who they are, because then that's enough for someone or some group of people to latch on to that character. Then as they go on, they can potentially develop to be complex characters. Like with the women of this tribe, Justine, what we've been told about her character is she's smart. She's a saleswoman and she knows what she's doing. So that's what we know, and we have to take at face value.
Cody throwing salespeople under the bus, the traitor, salespeople traitor.
But then that's the funny thing too, is that, like, just as equally about that salesman, I guess, archetype that he's trying to portray here, he's showing that he's smart, but there's a chaotic side of him that is not present in Justine, which could potentially be why she goes further than he does. NECA, I was expecting her to be a lot more dissociated with the rest of the tribe due to cultural differences, but it's actually shown that she's not, and she could potentially get in socially.
You saying, Tiki? I couldn't really hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just said she's really integrating herself quite well. Yeah.
I just feel
I was just gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if next vote they're all just like, hey, why don't we just vote off Dwight? We know he doesn't have any immunity idol. We know that he doesn't even have a vote to defend himself. He can't even use the shot in the dark because he doesn't have a vote to spend a shot in the dark title on. Why don't we just all vote Dwight? And there's literally nothing he can do about it.
I do think out of the edit, I think Dwight might be the most likely to go from this tribe first.
I could see that. I could also see it being Justine as well, but I'm hoping that's not the case. I mean, you don't get. I mean, that's the thing. You don't
like Justine from the brief bits we have gotten from her. I like her tomboy energy.
I don't dislike anyone that's been introduced to us so far, but yeah, Dwight just screams unfortunate circumstances.
That's a personal thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's all subjective.
Well, the problem is like I said, I knew where basically everybody stands in their tribes. I'd say that with everybody except Dwight. That's the one guy I don't know where he stands. I know that Noelle and Justine are together. I know that Cody and NECA seem to be voting together. I mean, they haven't voted, but they say that they want to do an alliance. And then I know that Jesse's kind of in the middle of that, but I have no idea where Dwight is at and all that.
Let's
So
see.
maybe he's just on the outs.
So I guess another issue I have with Cody is like just as far as like the personal thing goes, is that like it kind of hits a little close to home as far as like people with this kind of like 24/7 party energy are usually not the type of people that I personally get along with or that personally vibe with me. And I could be absolutely off base with this, but I kind of get the feeling like he's the type of person where he's so fixated on living this kind of like party lifestyle that I don't necessarily, this could be totally baseless speculation. All right. Like, I feel bad for even saying this if it's not true at all. Like, it could be totally baseless, but it's just kind of like me projecting my own insecurities. I get the feeling like if I were trying to hang out with him in a group setting and I had like some sort of social anxiety or something, like he would not be okay with that and like not come to my defense. And he'd be like, bro, you just got to chill out and go with the flow of the party, man. I don't know. Like,
I think that's an exaggeration.
That because like
part of me wants Gio and him to meet just so we can have Gio. He's like, oh yeah, Cody's a total poser. He's one of those flipping tourists that come here and stay here. And I'm one of you now. Don't even shut up, bro.
Right? Yeah. Like, there's just something about Cody's vibe that everything about him feels just slightly inauthentic, if that makes sense. Like, it's as if his whole life is like trying to play up this character, not just on TV, but that's just how he is. You know what am I making sense?
I mean, to each their own. Some people like the party all the time, but I'm not necessarily one of those people.
Like,
I just don't think Cody has it strategically. I just think his story is going to be somebody like delusional. Like, I get like vibes from like, remember that time in Game Changers where Jeff asked if there's anybody who doesn't think who thinks that they can beat everybody, and flipping Troyzan raised his hand. That's the type of thing I get from Cody. I feel like he's going to be delusional, full of himself, but thinking he's going to be humble beyond belief. And that's the path I see for him. But who knows?
I mean, he's certainly playing hard, and I will like he's playing chaotic, but I will give him at least some form of credit that it seemed like throwing shade at Justine, at least in the short term, did get some people on his side and did kind of form that kind of three-way thing. So I don't know. Like,
it's funny. If they went to tribal council first, that might have worked. Because like when you're in the early goings of the game, any reason is a good enough reason to vote somebody out.
Right.
You be a salesperson? Yeah, that's all I need. Vote them out. But as the game goes on, that's really when you decide what your real relationships are the longer you spend with them. So maybe his plan would have worked, but I don't know if it will have legs going forward.
All right. So I also want to touch on Jesse a little bit, because he's another character who is very high up there for me. Did not disappoint. I think he's just a super sympathetic, rootable backstory. Just seems like a very humble guy. I love the idea of him. Like, yeah, I don't really have friends, man. It's just me and my wife and my kid just hanging out. Like, oh my God, I love you, Jesse. But one thing I really like about this season, here's the thing. I've heard this season criticized because it's like, oh, all these people have these sob stories and there's no villain. First of all, I absolutely think there's villainous potential for some of these people. Absolutely. Secondly, I think the tone of the first tribal council set the tone where, yeah, these are all really like people with really rootable backstories and like who have faced a lot of adversity and a lot of personal success and highs and lows. And I think because of that, it's gonna make every vote out like all the more personally challenging. And I can't tell you how refreshing it was. I want to kind of like, maybe as we're sort of like, wrapping up, this can kind of like bleed into final thoughts, unless you guys have any other, we can loop back around to anyone else on the Red Tribe if you want to. But I really do think, looping back around to that tribal council, I really was impressed with how they edited it to be, like in the moment, like, you get out there and like you can think in your mind a million times, like, it doesn't matter, like I can write someone's name down, no problem. I really think a theme of this season, based on that tone, is going to be the true moral quandary of when you literally have a whole cast filled with people with these incredibly rootable and sympathetic backstories. Literally everyone deserves to be there. I honestly think this season, like, especially with how dark the tone of that trailer was, I think we could be in for like the darkest season yet of the 40s, as far as like just kind of like the moral dilemmas and the and the backstabbing. And I think the fact that all these people are so sympathetic is just going to make the the natural process of elimination that the game is, the brutal, cold, harsh reality that only 3 people are not going to be voted out at some point. I don't know, man. I'm kind of excited for that prospect of that darker tone and that kind of like, that morality play sort of thing. With this
if that happens, that's amazing. That would be an awesome, kind of theme to look at in this season. But I think in the reality of it, it's the same thing with season 41 and 42. They're looking to redefine Survivor in this new era. And what's the best way to do it? Start dipping into people's personal backstories, make them more than just the characters that we think they are, make them human beings. And I think the thing is you could pick pretty much literally any character from 41 or 42, and every single person has a sympathetic backstory. The Jesse backstory, you could just say Shan has the same exact backstory. You could pick Daniel, childhood leukemia,
I think the difference is the tone, because I don't think in 41 or 42 we got a tribal that was edited to be just that intense, where everyone was just so on edge about the idea of having to write down a name at all, and just kind of like, I don't know. I could be off base. But like I said, I'm judging this based on the tone of that first tribal mixed with kind of that dark tone that the trailer had. I don't know.
I feel like there is a thing with Survivor that they're not, like when people say that they're not casting villains anymore, I think what they're meaning is like they're not casting the Russell Hanses or the the Kylo Rens. They got. I see Kylo Ren's. Kyle Jason.
Just randomly.
Anyways,
pops up on Survivor like under boss style.
Anyway, but I think the thing is that Survivor is by its very nature a villainous game. I think. If y'all remember back in Heroes versus Villains at the merge, when they said, what should we name our merge tribe? Parvati said, all villains. And I remember when I heard that, I thought that was like, this is a very pessimistic way to look at it. But the more I understand Survivor, the more I think that is the most fitting thing you could name the thing. Because every single person out there, if you voted somebody out, you have destroyed somebody's dream. And that is what you were there to do. You were there to destroy somebody's dream and put yours above theirs. That is villainous by its very nature. I'm not saying you did anything wrong by voting out Mariah. That is the nature of the game. But you all got to know that none of you who are playing the game are heroes. Absolutely not. Doesn't mean you're villains either. Just means you're a people in the contest of a game. And to do that, you have to destroy everybody else's dreams.
Well said.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on that note, anyone else
I think
have
that's
any
a good
final
note to end
thoughts?
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good.
All right.
All right. Well,
I'd like to thank the Academy for this performance.
yeah, I guess on that note,
Yeah, we truly hope that you guys have enjoyed our I would say the cast assessment was a little teaser. This is the first episode with the Penner cameo, so screw it. Let's just say that this is our official first episode. And
the Survivor Storytell channel begins now.
As always, folks, the plan for Storytellers, what we were doing the last 2 seasons on my other channel, we're going to have a check-in right before the merge. We're going to have a check-in at the merge episode, check-in at the penultimate episode, and then a season wrap-up at the end of the game. So 4 more podcasts. And then
And
also on the
I'll try to fix my camera so I'm not hidden in the spy shack here.
Also, be sure to like and subscribe because and ring that bell like the gong at the Survivor Borneo Tribal Council because even in the off season we are planning on doing top 10 lists and stuff like that, all centered around the editing and storytelling of Survivor. So yeah, look out for that and see y'all later.
bye.
It's what we do.